Hi guys, Lori here from Unique in the Creek. Today we will be making a traditional, easy to make Christmas tree. I will be using two different meshes, but you can use whatever mesh you would like. I am going to be using a green and jute colored poly jute, it's called. It's 10 inches in diameter. And I'm also going to be using a value mesh. This is like more of a pine green value mesh, deco mesh. There is no metallic or anything in it. But this is a good way to make a creation without having to use really the whole thing with really expensive mesh. Now, I'm not saying that poly jute is really expensive, but it is a bit more pricey than the value mesh. But once you incorporate the two, with one roll of poly jute and one roll of the value deco mesh, you can get away with making two Christmas trees and still not cheapen the look of it. So I'm going to just show you a really basic way to do one of our trees. We will be using the triangle board. We used to call it the tree board, but we make so much other things with it that we had to stop with the whole tree thing because it's just way more than just trees. So we now call it the triangle board. So Dave has graciously preloaded my zip ties for me, and this is what it's going to look like when you preload it. But I'm going to show you a board without it preloaded. So on our board, there are sets of holes. It may look like just a whole bunch of holes in a piece of plastic. Well, basically that's what it is. But when you do get the board, you'll see that there's little lines in between each set of holes. These are indicating that these are sets, okay? And we have numbers going down the middle, right there, from 1 to 12. And we did this for easy teaching. So a lot of people use our boards for teaching workshops in their community and stuff like that. And I did a lot of workshops with my prototypes, and I was taking notes on the way and tweaking things as I was doing this. And I found that I was always trying to point and hold up in the front of the classroom what row I was working on. And it's just one of those simple things that just clicked. It's like, well, let's just put numbers on it. So it is numbered from 1 to 12. So when you are teaching, you can actually indicate, okay, now we are doing row 12, and this is what you do. So all our boards are made like that. You'll see all of them have numbers. The cross has numbers going down, and then has letters going across. So when you're teaching on the cross, you can say, okay, now we're on row A. So that is why we did that. And then each set, it just indicates what holes belong to what, okay? These boards are polypropylene plastic. They are 100% recyclable, and they are made 100% with recycled materials. These boards are actually made with yogurt containers. Yep. They're ground up at a factory, our factory, and I don't know the whole process of what they do, but they make them into little pellets, and then they add a little bit of coloring to it. Ours, we picked gray. Gray is very easy for all mesh to hide. A lot of people spray paint the boards. I've never spray painted one in my life, but if you want to spray paint the boards, then you can spray paint the board the base color of whatever you want. Sometimes I do wish I had spray painted the board white when I'm using white deco mesh, especially if you're using a very inexpensive deco mesh. Like a value deco mesh, it's not going to give you a lot of coverage, okay? Now, if it had metallic and stuff in it, and you scrunch it up and everything, then you get a little more coverage and it would hide better. So white would probably be the only color of mesh that I would actually maybe spray paint the board. Now, saying that, I've done tons of white snowman and Santas and everything, and I've never seen the board through it. But I like to say that just in case people do use a less expensive mesh, they know that, you know, if they can see the board through it, they may possibly have to spray paint it. I personally use, I love when I'm doing Santas and snowmans and everything, I personally love the snowball mesh, the iridescent one. It has amazing coverage, and it really isn't that expensive. You can get it around $5, $5.50, some places up to $10. So that's my favorite, my personal favorite when I'm doing, you know, using white. The back of our boards, what is very appealing to a lot of people, that the back of our boards, when you're finished, because I use zip ties, so the back of the boards you stay really nice and smooth and clean, and you don't have to cover anything or cut pipe cleaners and push them down and all that stuff. And there is just so much you can do with them. So check out the YouTube channel once I'm done this, and you may never know. There may be something on there that's like, ooh, maybe I can make that. Watch the video and it's like, yeah, I can make that. So on the back is our logo, our website, made in Canada, and the patent is pending. Patents take a long time to do, even though we've expedited it. It still there's still a process. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to preload my board. Now, we call it preloading the board because it's easier to do your wreath with your zip ties already in. So sometimes you'll see me say open preload or closed preload. Open preload would be just going down one hole and coming up the other with your zip tie, and you leave it open. A lot of times I do this for poof methods, okay? For this particular one that we're going to do tonight, I'm going to be doing the closed method, which means the same thing. You're going to go down one hole and you're going to go up the other, and you're going to give it a little zip, okay? When you hear that zipping sound, you should not be able to open your zip tie. If you don't hear that zipping sound and your zip tie comes right open, it's probably that you put your zip tie in backwards. Now, these zip ties I get, it's pretty much impossible to put in backwards, but some of the more inexpensive zip ties, you can put them in. You want to hear that zipping sound. And to do it correctly, there is a flat side of your zip tie and a more concave side. You always want the flat side, and I say that when I'm putting in my zip ties, you always want the flat side facing up to the ceiling. Okay, if you have it facing up to the ceiling, you always will have it in the right way so that the tail of the zip tie will go through the head. And you will pull and you'll hear that zip. It will not come undone, okay? So that's your little lesson on how to do a zip tie. It does take some practice sometimes, you know, if you're not used to it. When I first was teaching using zip ties, because nobody really in the wreathing community ever used zip ties. When I was creating the boards, I wanted to make sure it was something that I could use with the zip ties, because pipe cleaners or chenille stems or anything, you can use them on the board, but I have a bit of carpal tunnel and arthritis in my wrist, so that whole turning motion really gets to me. So I wanted to use something other than pipe cleaners. So these work out fantastic for me, and I'll flip this over in a second. So you're going to want to preload. For this particular design I'm doing, I'm preloading all the way up to number 2. I'm not going to preload number 1 because I have a really nice bow that I'm going to be putting there. Okay, so you will preload close all the rows up to row 2. Now in the back, even with my mesh and everything on the board, in the back, this is still all you will see. You're only going to see the back of the zip ties, and there's nothing to scratch anybody's door, which is really fantastic. And another really good thing about our boards, and another reason I created the boards, is almost 95% of our designs will fit between 2 doors. Here up in Canada, most people have storm doors, just due to the weather and everything. And I was finding I was making work wreaths with the ties already built on the frame, and they would get like 10 inches high, and I couldn't fit them between the doors, and they were just way too big for our area. So that was another reason. I do love the big, huge, you can do a big Texas size wreath. If you watch Michelle from Monkey's Creations, she does them all the time. But just for my area and my customer base, they were looking for wreaths that they could put between 2 doors. And so that's what I came up with. You can put them on the outside of your doors and everything, but we get a lot of winter winds and stuff like that, that the wreath would blow right off the door. So that is why they like to put it between 2 doors. Anyways, so you're going to preload all of your board. So Dave has he's my preload king. He has already preloaded my board for me, and this is what it looks like. Now these zip ties are 18-pound zip ties. You want to use 18-pound zip ties, A, because they're cheaper, for one thing, and B, it gives you a nice snug fit between your mesh or ribbon or whatever you're using and the board. Okay, and it looks nicer on the back. If you go up to 40 pounds, you get big, thick zip ties, and it doesn't look as nice, and you don't get the as nice of a snug of fit between the zip tie and the board. You can use them. I'm not saying you can't. It's just if you can get 18-pound, they usually are a lot cheaper, more inexpensive. I like to use between 6 and 8-inch zip ties because I want to have that working space, because sometimes I'll be putting mesh, ribbons, and a piece of flower or greenery in one zip tie. So I want to have space in there instead of having to shove it in. Some people use little bitty 4-inch ones, and I cringe when I see that because it's so much more work. So it doesn't really matter the length as long as it's I would say over 6 inches, because even if I sometimes use 8 inches depending what supplier I'm getting them from, you're going to end up cutting the tails off anyways and throwing them away. So the length doesn't matter, it is just the pound that matters, and you want 18 pound. And that's the strength or tensile. I think that's how you call it, say it, tensile. Anyways, okay, so I think I have I believe these are 6.5 inches. And this is all preloaded. Now, my mesh, I cut my mesh at 10 inches. I did bag seal these ones, and I do have a whole tutorial on bag sealing. You can wood burn, which is almost the same effect. I do like bag sealing, which is just literally what it is, one of those plastic bag sealers. It is fast for me rather than taking that time, because it does take a lot of time to make a straight line with the wood burner. I can go and do a whole roll of mesh with my bag sealer in about 5-6 minutes. I do wear a respirator if I do it in the house, and I do it downstairs where there's nothing, no animals or anything. Or lately I've been doing it outside in the open air, because you're burning plastic, okay? You don't want to be inhaling the plastic fumes. A paper mask will not work. This plastic, what are they called? Plastic, oh my God, I'm having a brain issue. Particles. The plastic particles are microscopic. They will go through the paper. It's not like burlap, where burlap are big particles in the air and you can pretty much see them. So do take safety precautions. The reason we do bag seal them, if you've not heard, is the mesh does unravel if you do cut it and frays. It's called frays. When you're sealing it, it will kind of burn the edges and melt them and prevent the fraying. I've seen people using lighters on the ends of their things, and that's just craziness. That'll take you forever to make a wreath. Now, I did bag seal this one, even though it is poly jute. It does have jute running through the mesh. The bag sealer will not cut or melt the jute, that's okay though, because it leaves a line. It does melt the plastic, which is the part that frays, and then I just go along on the line and cut, like you just seen me do with this little extra piece, down that line and cut it right off. Okay, and you would mostly do this if you're going to see the edges of your project. The sunflower, a lot of people use poly burlap. You're definitely going to want to heat seal a poly burlap project like that, because you will see all the frays. So a lot of the projects I teach, you don't have to seal the edges. This one I'm doing tonight is one of the exceptions. It's a very simple petal. But you do see the edges of it. So, and this is this is for a customer. So I want to make sure it looks really good. So I did bag seal it. Okay, so I have done a tutorial. So if you're interested in looking and watching how I bag sealed, you can find that on my YouTube channel. Okay. Now, if you're not needing to bag seal, you can just pull your mesh out and use your rotary cutter or your electric scissors or your normal scissors, or however you cut your mesh. We're going to do it. These ones I'm actually doing these ones at 9 inches. I tend to do some stuff at 9 inches only because I find a lot of my projects need 36 pieces of mesh. And if you cut your 10-yard roll at 9 inches, it will give you 36 pieces exactly. So you don't have to open another roll. And you can't tell that it's 9 inches instead of 10 inches. So why waste the mesh and open another roll? So you can do it at 10 by 10. Some projects I do say I cut these at 10 by 10. This particular project, you will not be able to tell it's 9 inches, and I didn't have to open another roll of this, because you know what happens to those open rolls. They end up getting shoved somewhere and get all frayed and everything, and you don't use them. Anyways, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing 1 roll of poly jute and 1 roll of this value mesh. I'm going to be doing the petal the exact same way for each row, just alternating with the different types of mesh. And that is how you're going to get a little bit more bang for your buck without anybody really noticing that, you know, you used a less expensive mesh in there. Okay, so I have my 10 by 10 inch piece. My board is preloaded. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do, it's like a rolled. It's very simple. You take your 10-inch piece and you're going to turn it into a diamond shape. Now you're going to want mesh curls. It's got a tendency to curl on its own. Sometimes we use the curl up and sometimes we use the curl down. This particular one, we're going to use it curled up. So it looks like a U. Okay, you're going to turn it into a diamond shape, and you're going to take your bottom corner and we're just going to roll. Okay, we're just rolling just like that right up to the other corner. Okay, and this is what you have. I know a lot of people have done flowers. They call this starburst flower. So if you go into Unique Wreath Creators or wreath makers and workshops, you'll see a bunch of starburst flowers. It is this petal, okay? But it looks really fantastic on a Christmas tree. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bend it, and I want to make sure they're pretty much both sides are even, just like that. And I'm going to insert the bent part. I gotta look at my needle, make sure you guys can see what I'm seeing. I'll just put it down a little bit more. So where I had bent in the middle, I'm going to put this just right into the zip tie. I'm going to push it, I'm going to go insert it till just before it reaches the line here, okay? And then I'm just going to zip tie this up. Now, I still use a needle nose plier, and I have these little wire cutters. They're actually tile nippers, okay? But they are fantastic because you can get right to the head of the zip tie and clip the tail off, just like that. A lot of people are using the, what are they called? Zip tie guns. I do have one. I've been getting used to it. They do work great. So if you have problem with, you know, pulling the zip ties, if you don't have your hands not strong enough, the zip tie gun works well. And you can get them on Amazon. I think everybody's is blue. I got this on Amazon.ca, of course, so it's a little different than everybody else's. Like I said, I'm still getting used to it, but it does work really well. But I'm so used to my pliers and my needle and my nippers that it's hard to change old habits. But you can also find these. Now this is from Dave's Tool Shed. But you can also find these in the jewelry section of Michael's or any hobby store because they do use them for cutting wire for jewelry. But like I said, they're great for just cutting off zip ties. So I always have a little bucket close by, and I put all my zip tie ends in the bucket as I'm going along, so at the end I don't have a lot of mess to clean up. So basically the whole tree is this petal. So that's why I said it's going to be kind of a little boring to be watching on the live, but you can most definitely stay and join me and keep me company. And again, I'm just going to push this in. Now I like to push it down a bit just so it fans out at the bottom here. And if you make sure each one is put in just before the line, your leaves or petals or whatever you want to call them will always be the same length. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, oh, you can see all the zip ties, you can see the board, blah, blah, blah. Once you start layering your board, you'll notice it'll get fuller and you're not going to see the board. So the beginning couple rows do look a little bit funny when you first start, but don't worry. In the end, you get a nice full wreath that will fit between two doors, and it's really pretty, and it's actually a lot less inexpensive to ship one of our wreaths than a normal, say, you know, work wreath. I didn't push it in all the way. Because they are a bit flatter and they're very light and they're weather resistant. So pretty much any kind of mesh is weather resistant. So if you didn't add ribbons and all kinds of stuff, you could most definitely put your wreath out right outside in the inclement weather and it would still be fine. The only thing that may happen is your mesh may fade. And I've done quite a few tutorials where I've showed what sprays I do use for UV. I have found a great one, which I'll show you in a bit, that does protection and UV, and I really like it, and it smells nice. So we are going to be adorning this tree with just a little cute little finds I got at the Dollar Tree, little ornaments and little stars. I have these little bells that will look cute on it because, like I said, we are using a very traditional ribbon for the top of our tree. So this is a basic, simple Christmas tree. I think I must have at least 12 different kinds of tutorials on different kinds of just Christmas trees. So there is lots of ways to make these. And this is just one way. Now you can kind of see where it kind of goes up a little bit on the bottom of your mesh. If you're going to face them up, try and get them all facing up so it looks uniform. Or if you face them down, try to get them all facing down. I have mine facing down. So that's why I keep looking at it, just to make sure which one's up or down. So as you can see, this is a really easy project. Normally I do this in my recliner on my lap, because you can see that I even did it in the lobby of the hotel. I just flipped my board over and used the back of my board as my tabletop on my lap. So I usually do this while I'm watching a movie or something, or I'll preload a whole bunch of boards. I'm never sitting still. I'm always doing something. So even if I'm not making a wreath, I'm preloading some boards, or you can pre-make your petals if you want and put them in a shopping bag, and I'll show you what I mean. So if you're just sitting there and you have nothing to do, or you're going on a road trip, have your mesh cut. Get yourself some of these little tiny elastic bands from the Dollar Tree in the hair section. You can get 500 of them for $1. And you can pre-make your petals on the go, or just sitting watching TV. All you have to do is whatever petal you're doing, so we're doing this one, I'm going to fold it over, and I'm just making sure that the ends are the same length. And then you can take one of these little elastic bands and just put an elastic in. And then you just leave it on. So you would take your petal and you can throw it in a shopping bag or a box or something, and you can have all your petals pre-ready to go. So when you're ready to make your wreath, you just sit and preload your board, take your petal, stick it in your zip tie, and there you go. You do not have to take the elastic off because you can't see it, and eventually it'll just disintegrate anyways. But it's a great little handy thing when to get yourself, especially for the Christmas season coming up. If you're going somewhere, you can do all kinds of prep on the go. Okay, so we're done in the first row of this. So the next row, now you can pull all your zip ties and then go back and cut each one. I just have a habit of cutting them as I'm going. I don't know why, because I have to pick this up 9 times. So now we're going to use the more value style mesh. And I think it's going to be really pretty, these two colors together. It'll give it a really nice contrast. Okay, so I'm going to roll it. Again, same thing. Really need more space. I do these at my dining room table. It's just my comfort place. Now, normally if I'm making a wreath, I do it in my recliner. So we're going to do the exact same thing. You're going to put it in, put it so it is almost to the line. And then once we start, this one's going to kind of flare out to the side like that. So it's covered that side of the board. And we're going to do that for all the sides to make sure that they will cover the board. Now you can incorporate ribbon into your design. So you could put your mesh in and then a piece of ribbon. Or you can do a row of mesh, a row of ribbon, a row of mesh, a row of ribbon. I've done that. If you want to see that tutorial, I actually put a face of the Grinch in the middle of it. So that's the tutorial you could look for. This poly jute is very thick for this. But like I said, the first few rows start to they look kind of funny. And you never think they're going to cover, but they will eventually, because it's all going to pile on each other and make layers. So if I had pre-done all my petals and had them in a grocery bag, and I've done that quite a few times on lives, on tutorials, you could get this done probably in like 15 minutes. Now, if you even want it fuller, I think I'm going to turn these to the side because the nubbin of the petal is kind of thick. So if I just turn it to the side, it flattens a bit. Okay, there we go. I'm going to do all my zip ties after so I can get this done faster. And like I mentioned, there is many different ways. I think one of my favorite ways of the Christmas tree is actually just the Ruffle Method. The Ruffle Method is my favorite for pretty much anything. I don't know why, maybe it's just the whimsical look of the ruffle that I like. See, I go to grab the cutters all the time, but it's much faster if you just cut them all at the end when you finish the row. So as you can see, as I'm layering this, you're now not able to see really the zip ties anymore, and you only really see the edges, the ends of the petals here. So that will be the same for every row. So obviously the first couple rows take the longest because there is more holes, but you'll notice as you go up the tree, it gets faster and faster because there's less holes. Another way you can keep your costs down too is if you're using really thick mesh and doing, say, like a sunflower petal, you can actually skip every other hole and it still looks really full and nobody would know the difference. So that's another little trick. I've done that in a few videos as well. It all depends what you're using, what material. Like I've done a Christmas tree with actual Christmas tree pieces. So I bought actually it was given to me. Somebody gave me an artificial tree and I didn't need it, but I thought I could use the pines on them. So I cut little pieces of the pines from that Christmas tree and I just zipped each piece of pine into a zip tie and made a real looking Christmas tree. So there's a tutorial on that as well. I even flocked it. So I even put flocking on. As you'll see, once Christmas gets in Christmas mode, you'll see lots of people flocking things. So I actually made a tree, like I said, with the greenery from an old Christmas tree, and then I flocked it. And I made it rustic. It was very, very pretty. All right, so I've done them all. You just go along, snip it all off. See, much easier than picking up your wire cutters every time. But for me, it's just habit. All right, so now we're gonna continue on with the next row of poly jute. And this is looking fabulous already. I'm loving the two contrasts. I was just going to do all poly jute, and I thought, no, that's kind of boring. And then I really wanted to show you guys how you can save money by, you know, incorporating a less expensive mesh without really being able to tell the difference. Now we will go at the end where we will start kind of pushing, because this is going to start getting really full. We will be pushing these outwards, so you won't see the sides of the board. So I'm doing, there we go. Sorry guys, I talk to myself too. I know you guys we're creatives. All creatives talk to themselves. Sometimes I even answer myself. I have a staff meeting with myself. So it's very easy. So those of you out there that say you don't think you can do it, I don't think wreathing can get as simple as this. So those of you that have bought, I heard lots of that being at Wreath Makers Live this past week, that people bought the boards there, but they're intimidated to use them. Well, I'm showing you that there's nothing to be intimidated about at all. And you know what's great too? If you make a mistake, you flip it over, cut all your zip ties off. Zip ties are only like a cent a piece. Cut them all off, and you restart over again. Simple as that. I've done that many, 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 many of times. Creating all these designs doesn't really happen overnight. It's from playing with mesh all the time and twisting it and turning it and folding it, all different kinds of ways to come up with something and say, hey, that looks like that looks like it could be, you know, a daisy. And that's how a lot of my creations come up. I come up with. Can you see how full this is starting to get? And it's kind of really getting stacked. I guess that's the word. But I am so, so happy that I did pick the contrasting green color with it. Even a natural color would have looked really pretty as well. This one looks a little bit longer than the other ones. That's okay. Okay, you can start seeing that you don't see anything. Okay, I'm just going to go along and I'm going to pull these. Now, if you really get concerned and you think they're going to, you know, your petals will, what do I do here? This one's really short. Just pull it up. There we go. Your petals are, you know, you're a little worried that your petals may slide out. That's why I encourage you to use the 18 pound, because it does give you that nice snug fit. You can take your glue gun and run your glue gun and run beads of glue over. Just make sure it's connecting with the petal and the board, and that will ensure that your petals don't come out. Now, I don't do this, but if you feel the need for it, just go for it. You won't see the glue, and it'll give you a peace of mind that your customer, even if your customer grabs, you know, the tree by one of the petals, it's not going to come out. Sorry, water break. All right, now it'll get a little faster. can't wait to go touch the, or grab the wire cutter again. So this is going to look fabulous. This is the ribbon I chose to go on the top of my tree. So that's the bow. Like I said, this is just, it's just a traditional style Christmas tree with a little bit of a different petal fold, which is normally called the starburst petal. Now, I did not come up with this petal. However, I've watched a lot of lives of people using this petal, and I thought that it would make a beautiful Christmas tree. It does make a beautiful flower. So normally when I'm making a project like this, and like I said before, I do use my sit and make these in my recliner. I have a small little cutting board or cutting mat. You could even use like even a piece of, you know, wood, but I do have a cutting mat. It's small. Okay, it's only like 17 inches or 16 inches. And I use this on my lap to make all my petals or cut my ribbons or whatever, so I can do it on my lap. So I just wanted to let you guys know, now you don't have to go out and buy a cutting mat for your lap or anything. You can just use a piece of wood. I used to use a piece of wood all the time, whatever I could find that was in my immediate vision. Even a book will work. Just something to roll it. Now I'm going to switch this around because it's getting quite full. And I'm reaching, so if I'm going to turn it around so I don't have to reach so much. Push this nubbin down. Like I said, at the end, we will go and put our sides out. But you can see how the layering upon layering is really making it full. Let's go across and turn this sideways. Tighten my zip ties. And then snip them off. Have your little bucket. That way when you're done, you're not picking up all kinds of zip tie tails all over the floor, and because that's where they will end up. And that's where mine end up all the time. Now you can get mesh. This particular mesh, I believe I got. Now you can buy, all you need to know is it's poly jute mesh. This particular mesh, I believe I bought at, gosh, I don't even know. I'm going to say maybe Craft Outlet or Trendy Tree. As long as it says poly jute, this one, the poly jute is normally made by the same makers. So you can pretty much buy it from any place. The darker green is just a value mesh, which you can find anywhere. So you just pick whatever color you would like. And now you can use normal deco mesh, you can use fabric mesh, you can use whatever you want, whatever you have on hand. But this particular one is a poly jute. And my main places are that I buy stuff are Craft Outlet. Now I do have a mesh. Part of my business is selling mesh, so I do get it from a wholesaler sometimes. So I probably got it from Craig Bachman, which pretty much anybody that sells online, like Waterman's Loft or Deco Exchange or Trendy Tree or Wreath Shop, General Wholesale, they will all have pretty much have really, really good quality mesh. Now it's sometimes it's the big box stores that you have to watch out their mesh. It all depends. Some of them are coming out with some better mesh now. So it's just, you'll find a place that you really like their quality, their service, which is very important because a lot of people sell the same stuff. So you want to look at the shipping and what's close to you and what's affordable. You know, if you can only afford value mesh, you most definitely can make a beautiful tree like this, alternating with a lighter green and a darker green value mesh. This poly burlap is not value mesh. The dark green that I'm using is a value mesh. You can even buy the value mesh, I believe, at Paper Mart. It's like $1, almost like, I would say no more than $2 a roll for this stuff. It's got no metallics or anything in it. So that's why I call it a value mesh. And where is I did have the label somewhere. Oh, here's the label. This is the label for the value mesh. So that's all it says. And it doesn't say where it comes from or anything like that. So it's really hard to determine. But it doesn't say, that's it. It just doesn't have any metallics in it. But you want to stay away from the thin mesh. And by thin mesh, that is normally comes from Taiwan. I find all Taiwan mesh, well, I shouldn't say all Taiwan. They've been getting better. Like, for instance, some of the craft stores. A lot of them sell the Taiwan mesh. And it's very, very thin. So, like, if I'm teaching a flower, I will mention if you're using the Taiwan thin mesh. And once you start wreathing and doing more wreaths, you will know what's good mesh and what's not the greatest mesh. You'll know. Because you'll finish a project and it'll be all like frays and pretty much falling apart, and you can see your frame, like not even just the Unique in the Creek frames, but any frame. And 9 times out of 10, a person's project doesn't turn out the way they wanted it to because of the mesh. So I would do yourself a favor, and if you're making something and you're putting all this time and effort, use good mesh. Like, it just will make your life so much simpler. And like I said, most of the online wreathing stores, they only sell the good stuff. You know, like I'm talking about, you know, Trendy Tree and the Wreath Shop and all that. They do have value mesh, but it does say on their pages that it is value mesh. But I don't believe they sell like the very thin Taiwan mesh. At least I've never come across it. Like I said, most times you'll see it in the big box craft stores. Now I do know one particular craft store will be getting a little bit of better mesh in. I think the mesh gods finally heard us wreathers. Oh, see, I went and cut them. It's just, you form a habit. Look how nice this is. Oh my goodness. Now, when you're more done, we'll pull out, make sure all the tips are kind of pulled out so they're not tucked into each other. But you can't see the board, you can't see the zip ties. That's why I always say don't fret when you first start, because it will look sparse when you start, but it does fill up as you layer it. And it's still going to fit between two doors. It's very light, and like I said, you can incorporate using a less expensive mesh and still have a great end result. Now, I most definitely would recommend, if you're using a value mesh, that you do, like this kind of a petal, that you do wood burn it, or bag seal it, or somehow seal the edges, because it will fray a lot. And well, depending on what project you want, some people like the frayed look, and I guess it all depends on what you're making. You know, if you're making a scarecrow or something, you may want your edges to look frayed, because it will give it maybe the look that you're wanting. So we are almost done. I hope you guys are liking this so far. I think it's turning out fabulous. Christmas trees will be popping up everywhere soon. Christmas trees and angels. I'm just kind of looking at the mesh. Looks like some of my mesh I may have cut longer than the others, but once you can see, as it all is in the rows, even if you have short pieces, you won't be able to tell that the pieces are short. Now, I think there was one tutorial, I added pine cones onto my rustic Christmas tree. It was stunning. Just the little bitty pine cones, and you can add so much. I add lights to my trees. I was going to on this one, but because of the time, I didn't want to bore you guys way too much. But there is many tutorials on our YouTube channel with me putting the lights in. Once you've done the lights once for any of the wreaths you do, it's exactly the same of the way you put it in. And lights are very easy to put in to your creations using the board, because to start off, we just tape the lights in place right on the board, and then with the mesh, it gets zip tied right into the creation, so the lights will not come out, which is kind of cool and very easy to incorporate. And lights are big time right now in wreaths. I use lights that are timered, because who has time to actually turn on their wreath and turn off their wreath? So the lights that I buy actually I have it set right here. They actually have a timer built into them. These are just white lights. And when you turn your lights on, for instance, if you turned it on at 6 p.m., the first time you use them, it will shut itself off at midnight and then turn itself back on at 6 p.m. again. So you never have to remember to turn your wreath off. So I do have those on my website, and I will be placing an order for a ton of them. They're very hard to find, and you can find some on Amazon, but they're very pricey, the timered ones. I have a supplier that I have found here in Canada that has them, and I get a really good price on them. So I will be placing a big order for those because the season is coming up, and it's so much nicer when people don't have to, if you do incorporate the lights, because I'm telling you, the lights really set it apart from any other kind of wreath, especially when you don't have to turn them on and off. Well, look at this so far. Is this not beautiful? It's gorgeous. Look at the back. You would never know all that mesh until you've seen that, but all that mesh is on the front of it, but the back is so much cleaner. Another thing that's really nice, and I say this all the time, is if you do have a business and you do sell your wreaths, whether it be on Etsy or a craft show, especially a craft show, do yourself a favor and get yourself some stickers made. Even if it's address labels that you buy from Staples. If you put your business name and how somebody could order this wreath again, and you put a sticker on it on the back, that way their friend, somebody's friend, if they come over, oh my gosh, that wreath is so stunning, where did you get it? Most people say, oh, just I went to a craft show and there was a lady there selling them. I don't know what her name was, which is the norm for craft shows. That person can now flip their wreath over, and your sticker will be right there, and you just got a customer. And that person loved their Christmas wreath so much, they now want an Easter one, so they know where to find you again. So that I like to tell people all the time. And if you are interested in having some stickers made, you know, more professional looking stickers than just address labels, which address labels do just fine, it does the job, you can contact me. I do have a person that does amazing logos, and will create a logo for you and does do the stickers. But like I said, if you're just starting out and that is not in your budget, still go to Walmart or Staples or anywhere and just buy yourself a package of address labels and put your business name on there, and how they can contact you, whether it be your Etsy, your Facebook, or just calling you. That way you'll always have another customer. Okay, we're almost done. We're almost done. My stuff fell on the floor here. Okay. I just have to keep turning these little nubbins. I'm not sure what they're called, but I call them nubbins. This is stunning, I must say. Good choice, Lori. See, I'm having another team meeting with myself. My mesh fell on the other side of the table, but that's okay. I'm just gonna cut some of this since I can't, my husband is not looking at me and I'm trying to flag him down to see if my mesh fell on the other side of the table. It's okay, husband. I'm just gonna improvise here. I'm just gonna cut some since we're near the bow. I just need 3 anyways, so it's okay. I hate the inside of the mesh. I hate that it curls so bad. So you've seen how I just cut mesh just with the my rotary cutter. Now this mesh will probably fray, but that's okay because my bow will cover most of the top anyways. So I'm not too concerned about that. Two more pieces and we're done. Now I will show you, as soon as I'm done this, how to put a hanging string in it. This nubbin, I forgot to cut these off. One more piece. Here we go. We are done. Now I'm not too concerned about the center here. If I wasn't having a bow or something, I would put one piece, and we call these shared holes. You put a zip tie. I'll flip it over so you can see what I'm talking about. So with a shared hole, even though there's no line in between these, you can still put petals or ribbon or whatever you need in between these holes. You would go down one hole and up through the other exactly like we did before, but there is a zip tie already in that. So we call them shared holes. So for instance, now this is a bigger space, but you could still do it. If I wanted to put a piece in between here, now I know my bow is big, so I'm not going to have to worry about from here down. But if I wanted to, you would take your zip tie and you go down one hole and up the other and zip it. And I don't think I have another piece of mesh right here handy. I'll just cut a piece. So you would take a piece and you do your same petal. This one's quite large, but it doesn't matter. I'm just doing it as an example. And you put it, and you can put it in. Actually, maybe I will keep it. Looks pretty good. Might as well keep it. It's in there. But anyways, you can use that space as well. So you don't need to drill more holes or anything else. There's lots of creations out there that we do use shared holes. I should have cut that mesh a little bit better. But like I said, it doesn't matter because the bow is going to cover it. But you can see it's doing a bit of fraying there. Now, if you were doing, using a wood burner or whatever, or the bag sealer, you wouldn't see that fraying. I'm not too concerned. Like I said, I'm putting my bow on there. But what do you guys think? It is beautiful, isn't it? I love the contrasting dark to green. Again, this is a value green. I don't even think the color name is on here. It's made in Vietnam, and the item number is X as in X, B as in Bob, 90208. If you plug that into Google, this mesh should come up. And then this mesh is just the standard poly jute. Poly jute usually comes in like all different rustic colors. And this is the only green poly jute that I've ever seen. Poly jute always has the burlap or jute running through it. So it tends to be more rustic. So they keep it at the rustic colors. So I think I have like reds and stuff like that. But this is just a poly jute 10-inch. Okay, so that's the tree. Now I am going to add my bow. Now I'm not going to show you how to make a bow. I'm not the greatest bow maker. There are a ton of tutorials out there. I have quite a few tutorials too on bows. My bow's okay, but I think it'll look really pretty on my tree. Now I'm going to zoom or come out just a little bit. Now what I did with my bow is I did use zip ties. Again, I'm all about that zip tie. I put a zip tie down the center. Now you can use wire. A lot of people teach to use wire. But I just habit of zip ties. I like zip ties too because you'd never know where somebody's going to put this. And if you think about it, pipe cleaners and Chanel stems or any of that are metal. So that will eventually rust. I'm not saying that zip ties are the end all be all. I know my zip ties that I buy have a 10-year life warranty. They will not break down in the sun. So find a zip tie manufacturer or somebody, or you can even buy them from me. I do sell them. I purchased them from an actual zip tie manufacturer. That's all they do is make zip ties. So they're good quality zip ties. You know, you can use ones from Dollar Tree and stuff. They have 18-pound zip ties as well. But sometimes you go to pull them and, you know, the zip tie will break. And it eventually will break down in the sun. Any thin plastic will break down in the sun. Ours is actually polypropylene. It will not break down in the sun. But there is things out there, you know, a thinner plastic that will break down. The sun does damage not only to our skin, but all our crafting stuff. Okay, so there's my bow. Just a simple, traditional plaid bow. I did put a zip tie in the back. And then I put a zip tie through underneath that zip tie so I can just zip tie it right to the board. Now before I do that, on the tree board, well, on all our boards, you will always find beveled holes or indented holes. They're actually called chamfered holes. Learned that from the tool and die maker. These are I call hanging holes. Now you can use ribbon and make a nice bow at the top for a hanger. You can use twine. I just tend to use zip ties all the time because they're always handy. So all you have to do is put the zip tie down the hole, the two holes, and make a hanger. Okay? That's it. You can cut this end off and make it a little prettier, but it's just used for hanging, so I don't use anything spectacular. I'm going to do mine right here and right here. Now there is a single hole at the top. If you just want to add, say, an ornament at the top or whatever, it's just there if you need it. You can use it for a hanger as well, like this. It would just twist a little. So it's just there in case you need it. If you're using a smaller bow, you may want to put the smaller bow through that hole. But I'm just going to be using these two holes right beside the hanging holes. Or I might even use the hanging holes. We'll see. So I got my zip tie. All I'm doing is I'm actually going to use this hole and this hole beside the hanging hole. And I'm going to zip my bow on. Now once it's zipped on, oh shoot, I should have did this under there. Once it's zipped on nice and tight, then you can start pulling your loops because it acts almost as a wreath holder. Now you want to pull, and as you're pulling your zip tie, you want to make sure when you're pulling it that it ends up with the head in the hole. That way you don't have any sharp ends on your zip tie that could potentially scratch a door. So if you pull and tighten and make sure it pops into one of the holes there, we still have a nice smooth surface, and the the sharp part of that zip tie, not that I need to cut this anymore, but is towards the side, and it's not going to scratch your door. All right, now I'm going to just pull my, I wasn't sure. I kind of squished my bow. But like I said, you can hang your wreath on the door or whatever, and you don't need any kind of box or anything to move your loops around. I'm doing this upside down, so it's a little bit harder. But you guys got the gist of it. It's much easier to do your bow and to primp your wreath when it's on an actual wall or door, because you do get a different perspective when you're looking at it straight on than when you're looking at it when it's on a table. Okay, so that's good enough for now. Now I think I might add a few little of these. Now it looks beautiful, just simple like this. What do you guys think? Very pretty. So let me scan up a little bit. Isn't that pretty? And it wasn't hard at all. Not at all. A little time consuming, kind of boring. But like I said, I do it with watching a movie and on my lap. But it's very pretty. Yeah, I love just the simpleness. I may just keep it like this because I do love the simplicity of it and how the two meshes just make it really nice contrast. Now what I can do is I can place these on just to see what it will look like should I want to. Now you can go and wire them on or whatever, but they're so light. If I was going to do, although this look how pretty this looks. I might have to put a few on. I'll probably just hot glue them on. They're very light, and if you're using a good glue, you could just kind of hot glue. Let's try it. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little bit of hot glue, and I use Gorilla Glue. You can use any kind of industrial glue. I would not recommend like a dollar store glue. And I'm just going to put it under here so it kind of looks natural. Instead of burning my fingers, I'm just going to hold this on that petal with a clothespin. Now this package has glittery ones, shiny ones, and more of a matte one. I think I'm just going to use the shiny and the matte. I also have these gold balls. Let's see how this will look. These two are from Dollar Tree. There's quite a few in a little package. Now the gold might look really pretty because of the gold that's in the ribbon. But again, they're really, really light. There's no need to wire them in. Now let's try some gold here and see what it looks like. Or maybe I should do both. I think I might have to do both. It just looks really pretty. Let's try. There, just hold that. Oop. You could also just, I'm trying to put it under the petal so it kind of looks like it's hanging from the tree. Because if you just put it just like that, which you could just plop some glue and just put it on a petal. It doesn't look as natural like it's hanging from the tree. So I kind of just tuck it underneath a petal and hang it. Let's try, put one here. So nothing fancy, just some glue. I use all kinds of clothespins. Clothespins are my best friend. They give you an extra set of hands, especially if you're using hot glue. You don't want to touch them. So I'm not going to put too much on here. I'm going to put a few, just to give it a little pop of color. But I don't want to overtake the simplicity of it, because the simplicity is what I think makes it really pretty. And there's people out there like me that like simple. I'm a very simple person. My decor style, I like to be simple. Now my body, I love bling everything. My actual decor, not so much. I like to have a little simple stuff. So again, if you have this on your wall or on your wreath stand that you use for decorating, I would recommend doing it with it standing up or like on a wall. Like I said, you get a different perspective of how it's going to look. So I am just going to leave it like this, and I will post the outcome, a picture and everything. I think I put too much glue. You don't want to put too much glue. I think I put a little bit too much. But if you put too much hot glue and you need to get hot glue off something, I'm sure everybody knows, but if you use a blow dryer on high, you can melt a little of the hot glue and pull it off. Anyways, I'm going to stop it right there because I am going to add these on my wreath thing, and I don't have room to do it. Oh, I got hot glue here. To do it on my table here. I can see, so you can see that. All right. So that is a very simple, elegant, rustic, all keywords for your Etsy. Just a beautiful, simple Christmas tree, really easy to make, very economical to make, using the Unique in the Creek triangle board. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson, tutorial, whatever, and give us a try. Like I said, this actual petal has been used on our flower board as well. Makes a beautiful starburst flower. It's absolutely stunning. You can use it on pretty much anything. And so I would hope you will go and check out our YouTube channel, Unique in the Creek. There's different categories. If you have a board with you and you don't know what you want to make, just go under that category, for instance, large board, and just scroll down the pictures, see something that you may want to make, click on it, and I'll show you in my silly way how to make it. Okay, thank you everybody for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed this, this tutorial. Bye guys.